Most builders rush, waste energy, and still end up fixing mistakes. The Amish do it differently. With 40 smart construction tricks passed down through generations, they build faster, stronger, and with less effort than most modern crews. Their way turns building into an art of balance, where less effort creates more results. Plan before you lift a hammer. The Amish have mastered something most modern builders forget in their rush to get started. They never pick up a tool until every measurement is marked and every angle is checked twice. This isn't about being slow, it's about being smart. While others are cutting boards 3 times because they got it wrong, Amish craftsmen are already moving to the next phase. They sketch layouts right on wood surfaces or even in the dirt beneath their feet, keeping things visual and practical. No fancy blueprints needed when you can see the entire structure mapped out in front of you. Some people measure once and pray twice, but that's not really a building technique. Every piece of lumber gets accounted for before a single cut happens, which means materials don't end up in the scrap pile. The planning phase also sets up the team so everyone understands their role without constant explanations. When you know exactly what needs doing and where every board goes, mistakes become rare. Clear plans eliminate confusion, and confusion is what turns a 3-day project into a 3-week nightmare. This preparation creates a rhythm that carries through the entire build, and that rhythm saves more time than any power tool ever could. Build with a team mindset. Amish construction sites look like choreographed dances where nobody trips over each other. Communities gather for barn raisings and home builds, with each person assigned specific tasks based on their skills. One person isn't better than another. They're just better at different things, and that wisdom keeps projects moving like clockwork. Communication happens through brief words or simple hand signals, since there's no room for long conversations when you're balancing on a beam. This constant coordination means problems get spotted and fixed immediately instead of becoming disasters later. Nobody stands around wondering what to do next because the workflow was established before anyone arrived. When a wall frame needs lifting, 6 people move as one unit with synchronized timing. The energy stays high because progress is visible every hour, and that momentum becomes contagious. Group building cuts timelines dramatically compared to solo work. And it's not just about extra hands. It's about collective problem solving where 5 people catch the mistake one person would have missed. The team mindset also prevents the exhaustion that comes from trying to do everything yourself, which keeps quality consistent from start to finish. Use simple, reliable tools. Sharp hand tools and skilled hands outperform most power equipment, and the Amish prove this daily. Their toolboxes contain saws, chisels, planes, and hammers that have been maintained so well they're passed through generations. My grandfather's hammer built more houses than most modern contractors will see in a lifetime, and it never needed charging. These tools don't break down, don't need fuel, and don't add noise pollution to the worksite. The key is maintenance, which happens every single day without exception. A dull saw wastes more energy than people realize because you're fighting the wood instead of slicing through it. Amish builders oil their tools regularly to prevent rust and keep moving parts smooth. Sharpening happens each morning before work starts, taking maybe 10 minutes but saving hours of effort throughout the day. The reliability factor matters enormously when you're in the middle of a project and can't just drive to a hardware store. When a tool works the same way every time, your muscle memory develops and your accuracy improves naturally. There's also something to be said for the connection you develop with hand tools, where you feel the wood's resistance and adjust your technique accordingly. This feedback loop doesn't exist with power tools that just force their way through everything. Organize materials the Amish way. Walking onto an Amish construction site reveals an almost military level of organization that makes everything else possible. Lumber gets stacked by length and type in designated areas where everyone can access it easily. Nails, screws, wooden pegs, and braces live in separate containers within arm's reach of the main work zones. This setup means nobody wastes 5 minutes searching for a specific size board or the right fastener. The Amish understand that disorganization is a hidden time thief that most people don't account for in their project estimates. When materials are lined up logically, the workflow becomes automatic and the build pace stays steady. Workers develop a mental map of where everything lives, so reaching for supplies becomes second nature. This organization extends to tool placement as well, with saws, hammers, and measuring equipment returning to specific spots after each use. The system works because everyone follows it without exception, creating predictability in an otherwise chaotic environment. Clean staging areas also prevent accidents like tripping over scattered lumber or stepping on loose nails. Material organization directly impacts team morale because nothing is more frustrating than constant searching and delays. The Amish set this up before construction starts, treating organization as important as the foundation itself. The only product we'll ever promote on our channel is a book by Claude Davis, a veteran prepper, about 126 superfoods and preservation methods from crisis times like the Great Depression and wartime that are impossible to find elsewhere. We decided to promote his book because we are the last generation able to share these techniques and superfoods to our children or grandchildren. It would be a shame to see this information about highly nutritious foods and preservation methods to survive crises disappear. You can also find a book about herbal remedies from Nicole Apelian on their store. If you're watching this on TV, you can look up our channel, Frugal Solutions, on your phone or tablet and find the books by clicking the link in our channel description or any other video description. Mark everything clearly. Amish builders use chalk lines, knife scores, and wooden templates to mark every cut location before tools come out. Ever notice how the straightest lines are drawn by people who can't delete their mistakes? Pencil marks fade or smudge, especially when wood gets handled repeatedly, so they avoid them entirely. Each joint position gets marked with precision because alignment errors compound as structures grow taller. The marking process involves multiple people checking each other's work, creating a quality control system that catches problems early. Wooden templates are particularly clever since they can be reused across identical pieces, ensuring perfect consistency. When you mark everything first, the actual cutting and assembly becomes almost mindless because the thinking is already done. This approach also makes it easy for different team members to work on various sections without confusion about measurements. Clear marking eliminates the guesswork that leads to boards being cut too short or holes drilled in wrong spots. The Amish also mark orientation indicators so boards get installed in the correct direction relative to grain patterns. This attention to marking detail means joints fit together tightly without forcing or shimming. Taking extra time with marking saves exponentially more time during assembly and prevents costly material waste from cutting errors. Lay a solid foundation. The foundation phase gets more attention from Amish builders than any other stage because everything depends on it. They start by compacting soil thoroughly or laying crushed gravel to create a stable base that won't shift over time. Hand-mixed concrete or carefully placed stones secure the base structures with a level of attention that modern quick-pour methods often skip. Leveling at this stage is critical because even small variations become major problems once walls and roofs add weight. The Amish check level from multiple angles and across various points to ensure consistency across the entire foundation. This process might take an extra day compared to rushing through it, but that day prevents years of future repairs. Uneven foundations cause cracks in walls, doors that won't close properly, and floors that slope noticeably. The soil preparation alone can take significant effort, with tamping and checking and tamping again until it's rock solid. Stone foundations require selecting pieces that fit together naturally with minimal gaps, almost like a puzzle that bears enormous weight. The patience invested here pays dividends when the structure above goes up smoothly without constant adjustments. A solid foundation also improves the building's longevity dramatically, often meaning the difference between structures that last decades versus centuries. Use gravity, not force. Amish builders have figured out that fighting physics is exhausting and unnecessary when you can make physics do the work instead. Heavy beams get moved using levers, pulleys, and temporary wooden ramps rather than pure muscle power. Trying to lift a beam alone is like arguing with gravity, and gravity has never lost an argument. The technique involves finding balance points where weight distributes evenly, making impossibly heavy objects manageable with the right positioning. Temporary rails get built to slide materials along rather than carrying them. And these simple additions save tremendous energy over a long workday. Angles matter enormously in this approach because a slight incline can mean the difference between struggling and gliding. Pulleys multiply force in ways that feel almost magical when you're moving something that weighs several hundred pounds with minimal effort. The Amish also use leverage points strategically, placing fulcrums where small inputs create large movements. This working smart philosophy extends to how they position themselves relative to materials, always seeking the mechanical advantage. Rolling cylindrical objects instead of lifting them is another gravity-assisted trick that saves backs and time. The mental shift from forcing to flowing changes how construction feels physically and makes long projects sustainable. Teams coordinate to use collective mass and momentum rather than individual strength, creating a human machine that works with natural forces. Pre-cut all major pieces. Before assembly begins, the Amish cut every major piece to exact specifications in a dedicated cutting area. This preparation transforms the build site from a noisy workshop into a focused assembly zone where pieces simply come together. Grouping similar lengths together makes finding the right board instant rather than requiring measurements each time. Pre-cutting also improves accuracy because you're not making rushed decisions while other tasks wait for completion. The cutting process itself becomes more efficient when done in batches, with the saw staying at consistent settings for multiple identical pieces. This reduces waste significantly since careful planning means fewer miscuts and abandoned materials. Noise levels drop during the main build because the loudest work is already finished, making communication easier and the environment less chaotic. Workers can focus entirely on assembly techniques and alignment without the distraction of frequent measuring and sawing. The Amish also inspect each pre-cut piece before adding it to the staged materials, catching issues before they become built into the structure. This method requires more upfront planning but accelerates every subsequent phase of construction. Teams develop assembly rhythms that would be impossible if cutting interrupted the flow constantly. Level everything by eye and experience. Years of daily building develop an almost supernatural ability to spot crooked lines from across a worksite. The Amish train this skill constantly, checking their visual assessments against strings, plumb bobs, and the way sunlight hits surfaces. Precision becomes instinctive when you've framed hundreds of walls and noticed how even tiny deviations compound into obvious problems. They use taut strings to create reference lines that gravity naturally keeps true, then compare their work against these simple guides. Plumb bobs provide vertical references that never lie because physics doesn't have off days or bad angles. Sunlight serves as another natural tool, casting shadows that reveal unevenness invisible to casual observation. A crooked wall is like a bad haircut. Everyone notices it, but nobody wants to mention it until it's too late. The combination of tools and trained eyes creates redundancy where multiple checks confirm accuracy before moving forward. Experienced builders can glance at a corner joint and know immediately if it's square or needs adjustment. This skill saves time because mechanical checking becomes a confirmation rather than the primary measurement method. The Amish also teach younger builders to trust their instincts while verifying with tools until that instinct becomes reliably accurate. Visual leveling works best when you understand why things look wrong, not just that they do, creating deeper comprehension of structural integrity. Build walls flat on the ground. Assembling wall frames on flat ground before raising them upright is one of those tricks that seems obvious once you see it done. The Amish lay out all the studs, plates, and braces on level ground where gravity helps instead of fighting you. Nailing joints while everything sits stable is exponentially easier and more accurate than trying to hold pieces in place vertically. Teams work together on the ground frame, with some members holding while others nail, creating quality that would be impossible working at height. Once the frame is complete and checked for square, the entire wall gets lifted as a single unit in one coordinated motion. This approach requires teamwork but dramatically reduces the time compared to stick building walls in place. It's also significantly safer because nobody is working on ladders or scaffolding during the assembly phase. The lifted wall slots into position where it gets braced temporarily until adjacent walls provide permanent support. Building flat ensures consistency across all walls, since the technique remains identical regardless of which wall you're constructing. Quality control is simpler when you can walk around the frame on the ground and inspect every joint from all angles. The Amish have refined this process so thoroughly that wall raising becomes a predictable, repeatable event rather than a complicated challenge. Nail smarter, not harder. The hammer swing that looks effortless from experienced Amish builders contains years of refined technique. Nails get tapped gently at first to set the position and ensure they're entering at the intended angle. Angling nails slightly create stronger mechanical bonds than straight penetration because the wood fibers grab differently. Pre-drilling pilot holes in hardwood prevent splitting that would weaken joints and waste materials. The hammering rhythm matters more than force, with smooth, consistent swings delivering the nail exactly where it needs to go. Rushing leads to bent nails, smashed fingers, and damaged wood surfaces that all require correction time. The Amish understand that each hammer blow should accomplish something rather than just making noise and expending energy. Hand position on the hammer changes based on the nail size and the required force, with closer grips for control and extended grips for power. Watching an expert nailer reveals how little wasted motion exists in their process compared to beginners who swing wildly. The sound of proper nailing has a distinct rhythm that experienced builders recognize instantly as efficient work. Over a long day, proper technique prevents the hand fatigue and soreness that come from fighting the tool. This smarter approach means you can nail for hours without exhaustion and maintain consistent quality throughout the entire project. Perfect corner joints. Early. Corners are where everything either comes together perfectly or starts falling apart, and the Amish treat them accordingly. Diagonal measurements across corners verify square in a way that checking individual sides cannot accomplish. Corners are like first impressions at a family dinner. Mess them up, and everything afterward feels awkward. When both diagonal measurements match exactly, the corner is mathematically square and will keep the entire structure aligned. Wooden braces get installed temporarily to hold corners true while the rest of the structure adds permanent support. The Amish reinforce critical corners with additional joinery or strategically placed bracing that handles stress points. Getting corners right early prevents cumulative errors where each wall magnifies the previous wall's mistakes. A corner that's off by even half an inch can throw off door frames, window installations, and roof alignment later. Teams double-check corner measurements multiple times before declaring them acceptable and moving forward with adjacent sections. This attention to corners reflects understanding of how structures work as interconnected systems rather than isolated pieces. Proper corners also distribute loads correctly, preventing stress concentrations that cause premature failure. The time invested in perfecting corners early saves weeks of correction work later when problems would be buried under finished materials. Corners essentially set the template that all subsequent work follows, making them the foundation of the vertical structure. Work with the weather. The Amish read natural signs with the skill that comes from generations of outdoor work. Morning dew patterns, wind direction, cloud formations, and even how animals behave all provide weather forecasts more reliable than most apps. They avoid building on overly humid days when wood swells and won't fit properly into joints designed for dry conditions. Stormy weather means materials get protected and work pauses rather than pushing through with poor results. Weather and construction have a relationship status best described as it's complicated. Starting work early captures the coolest hours and best light while avoiding afternoon heat that exhausts workers and affects material properties. The Amish also understand how different woods respond to moisture and plan accordingly, using species that handle local conditions well. Rain delays get anticipated and worked around rather than treated as surprises that derail the entire schedule. Working with weather patterns means projects might pause temporarily, but progress faster overall with better quality. Materials stored properly between work sessions prevent warping, checking, or moisture damage that creates problems during assembly. Temperature affects how certain joinery techniques work, with some methods requiring specific conditions for optimal results. The relationship with weather isn't about control, but adaptation, accepting natural rhythms and building when conditions favor quality outcomes. Build strong but light frames. Amish frame designs achieve remarkable strength without the excessive weight that makes handling difficult. Cross-bracing creates triangular supports that resist deformation far better than simple rectangular frames. Diagonal supports turn rectangles into stable shapes that don't rack or twist under stress, adding rigidity without significant material costs. Traditional wood joinery techniques distribute loads across multiple connection points rather than concentrating stress on individual fasteners. The Amish prefer these joinery methods over heavy metal brackets that add weight and cost without improving actual performance. Balanced frames are easier to lift into position and require less temporary bracing, while permanent support gets installed. Understanding stress patterns means material goes exactly where needed rather than everywhere just in case. This efficiency extends structure life because properly stressed members don't develop premature failures from overloading. Light frames also make modifications easier in the future when inevitable changes or repairs become necessary. The techniques involved require more skill than simply overbuilding everything, but that skill creates better results with less material. Modern engineering often relies on brute force through heavy materials, while traditional methods use geometry and material properties intelligently. These lighter structures also put less stress on foundations, creating benefits that cascade through the entire building system. Keep workspaces clean. Amish construction sites maintain a level of organization that would shock anyone used to typical building chaos. After each major phase, teams spend time cleaning up scraps, organizing remaining materials, and clearing walking paths. A messy work site is like a kitchen where you can't find the spatula until your pancakes are burnt. This discipline prevents tripping hazards that cause injuries and material damage when people fall onto stacked lumber or tools. Clean sites make finding specific items faster since everything visible has a purpose rather than being random clutter. Tools return to designated spots immediately after use, preventing the time waste of searching for misplaced equipment. The Amish also stack unused lumber neatly rather than letting it accumulate randomly wherever it was last used. This organization protects materials from damage since properly stacked wood doesn't warp or get stepped on accidentally. Clean workspaces improve morale because progress is visible and the environment feels professional rather than chaotic. Teams work faster in organized spaces because movement isn't constantly interrupted by navigating around obstacles. The discipline of maintaining cleanliness also catches quality issues early when surfaces are visible and inspectable. End-of-day cleanup becomes routine rather than a massive project, taking minutes instead of hours when done consistently. This approach treats the workspace itself as a tool that requires maintenance, just like saws and hammers. Master the peg and tenon joint. Traditional joinery techniques create connections that last centuries, and the Amish maintain these skills while others abandon them for modern shortcuts. Peg and tenon joints involve precisely cut male and female parts that fit together like three-dimensional puzzles. Wooden pegs driven through aligned holes lock the joint while allowing slight movement that prevents stress cracks in rigid connections. These joints actually improve with age as wood compresses and settles, unlike metal fasteners that corrode or loosen over time. The flexibility of wooden joints allows structures to move slightly with seasonal expansion and contraction without developing problems. Cutting accurate tenons requires sharp tools and practice technique since tolerances are tight for proper fit and maximum strength. The Amish teach these skills to younger generations through hands-on practice that builds understanding of why each angle and measurement matters. Peg and tenon joints distribute loads across larger surface areas compared to nails or screws that concentrate stress at single points. This traditional method also creates beautiful visible joinery that becomes decorative while serving structural purposes. Modern builders often skip these techniques because they require more skill and time initially, but that investment pays returns for decades. The strength of proper joinery means structures can be disassembled and rebuilt without damage, unlike nailed connections that destroy wood during separation. Use templates for speed. Wooden templates transform repetitive tasks from tedious measuring exercises into rapid assembly operations. The Amish create reusable patterns for common cuts, angles, and holes that ensure perfect consistency across identical pieces. Once a template is made and verified, hundreds of pieces can match exactly without individual measuring and marking. This approach is particularly valuable for items like roof trusses, where every unit must be identical for proper load distribution. Templates also reduce errors since the pattern is checked once thoroughly rather than relying on repeated measurements that introduce variation. Carpenters can work faster with templates because the thinking is done and execution becomes almost automatic. The Amish store successful templates for reuse on future projects, building a library of proven patterns that cover common construction needs. Simple templates might be just wooden guides that show where to place nails for consistent spacing on deck boards. Complex templates could involve multiple pieces that work together to define angles and intersections for complicated joinery. Using templates also makes it easier to train newer builders since the pattern shows exactly what the finished piece should look like. The time saved across dozens or hundreds of identical pieces more than compensates for the initial template creation effort. This efficiency technique works because construction involves many repeated elements where consistency matters enormously for fit and function. Build roof trusses on the ground. Assembling roof trusses on flat ground follows the same logic as building wall frames horizontally before lifting. The Amish lay out all truss members on level surfaces where gravity assists instead of complicating the work. Precise angles and connections happen easily when everything stays put, instead of trying to fall while you're fastening. Multiple identical trusses get built using templates that ensure consistency across the entire roof structure. Teams coordinate carefully for lifting each completed truss, with specific people assigned to each position and movement synchronized. Pre-building dramatically reduces time spent working at height where safety risks increase and efficiency decreases. Building roof trusses in the air makes about as much sense as trying to assemble furniture while riding a roller coaster. Trusses lifted into position slot onto prepared supports where they get braced immediately to prevent tipping. This method creates roof lines that are remarkably straight because each truss started from the same accurate template. Quality control happens on the ground where problems are visible and fixable before trusses become difficult to access. The speed increase is substantial since ground assembly allows multiple trusses to be built simultaneously by different team members. Once trusses are up, roof decking installation proceeds quickly across the consistent framework. This approach requires planning for the lifting process but eliminates the complicated scaffolding needed for stick-building roofs in place. Reuse materials. Wisely, nothing goes to waste on Amish construction sites because materials represent time and resources that deserve respect. Old wood gets inspected carefully for soundness, with usable pieces cleaned and incorporated into new projects. Nails are straightened and sorted by size for reuse rather than automatically discarded after removal from old structures. Hinges, handles, and hardware get cleaned and oiled, often providing decades more service when properly maintained. This reuse philosophy saves money, obviously, but it also saves the effort of acquiring, transporting, and processing new materials. The Amish understand that old-growth lumber from historic buildings often exceeds the quality of newly available wood. Recycled materials also carry history and character that new materials lack, adding depth to construction that people instinctively appreciate. Each piece gets evaluated individually rather than making blanket decisions about whether old materials are worth keeping. Wood that's too damaged for structural use might become shims, wedges, or firewood rather than going to landfills. This comprehensive reuse approach is both practically efficient and environmentally sound, minimizing waste while maximizing resource value. The practice also teaches respect for materials and craftsmanship, understanding that quality items deserve extended usefulness. Modern throwaway culture treats materials as disposable, while traditional approaches recognize that proper care extends life indefinitely for many components. Balance weight evenly. Lifting heavy beams requires coordination that turns individual workers into a single, efficient machine. The Amish distribute loads across multiple people so nobody bears excessive weight that causes strain or injury. Balanced lifting means everyone engages simultaneously with rhythmic coordination that often involves counting or verbal cues. Teams practice positioning before the actual lift to ensure everyone understands their role and placement relative to the load. Weight distribution also considers how the object will shift during lifting, with stronger team members positioned where stress concentrates. This coordinated approach protects both workers and materials since balanced loads don't twist or bind during movement. The Amish use rhythm and timing instead of raw strength, creating momentum that makes heavy objects move smoothly. Improper lifting causes injuries that sideline workers and slow projects, making proper technique essential for maintaining steady progress. Teams also plan the entire movement path before lifting, ensuring obstacles are cleared and the destination is prepared to receive the load. Communication continues throughout lifts with constant updates about position, balance, and any developing problems. This teamwork transforms potentially dangerous operations into controlled, predictable events that repeat successfully project after project. The efficiency comes not from rushing, but from thorough preparation and coordinated execution that makes difficult tasks manageable. Keep tools within arm's reach. Tool belts and small workbenches positioned strategically keep everything the Amish need close by throughout the day. Nobody wastes precious minutes walking back and forth to retrieve a hammer or saw that should have been nearby. The Amish organize their personal tools by how often they use them, with the most frequent items getting the most accessible spots. A carpenter without his tools nearby is like a cook who keeps the salt in the garage. This simple organization principle adds up to significant time savings across a full project. When you're working on a wall frame and need to switch between measuring, marking, and nailing, having everything within reach maintains momentum. Workers develop automatic reaching patterns where their hands know exactly where to find each tool without looking. Small portable benches serve as staging areas that move with the worker as they progress along a wall or roof section. The Amish also keep spare nails, screws, and fasteners in divided pouches rather than one mixed container that requires sorting. This accessibility prevents the frustration and workflow disruption that comes from constant searching. Efficiency experts have calculated that workers can lose up to an hour per day just retrieving tools and materials, time that proper organization completely eliminates. Build in stages, not chaos. Completing one section entirely before starting the next creates order that makes complex projects manageable for Amish crews. This focused approach means the foundation gets fully finished and inspected before anyone starts framing walls. Each completed stage provides a solid base for the next phase, preventing situations where earlier mistakes get magnified. The Amish inspect thoroughly at stage transitions, catching problems when they're still easy to fix rather than buried under subsequent work. Teams avoid the confusion that happens when multiple stages overlap and workers aren't sure which tasks take priority. This sequential method also makes it easier to coordinate specialized tasks since everyone knows what's happening and when. Materials get staged for the next phase while the current phase finishes, keeping the workflow smooth without interruptions. Focused work prevents the scattered feeling that comes from jumping between unrelated tasks throughout the day. Quality stays consistent because workers develop rhythm and expertise within each stage before moving forward. The stage-by-stage approach also makes progress measurable and visible, which keeps motivation high across long projects. Finishing completely before advancing means nothing gets forgotten or left partially done, eliminating the need for backtracking later. Use sunlight for measurement. Morning and afternoon shadows become measuring tools in the hands of experienced Amish builders who understand natural angles. The sun's consistent path creates shadows that reveal whether walls stand truly vertical or roof lines run perfectly straight. Sunlight has been checking angles since long before laser levels showed up, acting like they invented straight lines. Low-angle light highlights surface irregularities invisible under overhead sun, making it easier to spot warped boards or uneven joints. The Amish position themselves relative to the sun to cast shadows across their work, using this free light source like a precision instrument. Different times of day provide different shadow angles, giving multiple perspectives for checking alignment throughout the workday. This natural method requires no batteries, calibration, or expensive equipment that can break or get lost. Understanding how light interacts with surfaces develops through practice, becoming instinctive after years of daily observation. Sharp shadows from direct sunlight provide clearer visual information than diffuse light from cloudy conditions. The Amish avoid working in dim conditions not just for safety, but because reduced visibility increases error rates significantly. Roof angles get checked by observing how shadows fall relative to walls and other reference structures. This ancient technique remains completely reliable and costs nothing while providing accuracy sufficient for traditional construction methods. Prepare for rain before it comes. Weather awareness means the Amish store lumber under protective covers or inside barns before the first drops fall. They design temporary storage with slight angles so rain runs off instead of pooling on protective tarps. Keeping materials dry prevents warping, swelling, and the frustration of waiting days for wood to dry enough for accurate fitting. The Amish track weather patterns naturally through cloud observations and atmospheric pressure changes they've learned to read. When rain seems likely, work shifts to tasks that aren't affected by moisture or focuses on completing phases that can't be left exposed. Wet lumber causes problems that extend far beyond the immediate delay, creating dimensional changes that affect how pieces fit together. Protected materials maintain consistent moisture content, which matters enormously for joinery that depends on precise tolerances. The Amish also angle work-in-progress surfaces slightly, so water drains rather than sitting in joints or on flat boards. Strategic planning around weather shows respect for materials and understanding that rushing through poor conditions creates more problems than delays. Dry working conditions also keep tools in better shape since moisture accelerates rust and dulls cutting edges faster. This preparation discipline means projects resume immediately when weather clears instead of losing additional time to drying and cleanup. Make every swing count. Hammering technique separates efficient Amish craftsmen from people who just bash nails randomly and hope for the best. Swinging a hammer harder doesn't make you a better builder. It just makes you tired faster. Rhythm matters far more than raw force, with smooth, controlled swings delivering nails precisely where intended. The Amish develop a consistent tempo that becomes almost musical, each strike advancing the nail without bending it or damaging surrounding wood. Controlled motion prevents the fatigue that builds up when fighting the tool instead of working with it. Grip pressure varies throughout the swing, starting firm for control and loosening slightly at impact to absorb shock. Watching experienced nailers reveals how little visible effort goes into driving nails completely flush in just a few strokes. The hammer head should strike square to the nail, not at an angle that bends the fastener or mars the wood surface. Follow-through matters just like in any skilled motion, with the hammer continuing smoothly after impact rather than stopping abruptly. One precise hit accomplishes more than 3 rushed attempts that leave bent nails and damaged materials. Over thousands of nails across a large project, proper technique saves enormous energy while maintaining quality. The Amish teach this rhythm to younger builders through demonstration and practice until efficiency becomes automatic. Cut boards to fit, not force. Every board gets measured on-site in its actual position before cutting happens in Amish construction. Real-world conditions never match perfect plans exactly, and smart builders adapt to what's actually there. The Amish make minor adjustments to accommodate slight variations in existing work rather than forcing pieces into spaces they don't quite fit. Forced fits create stress in wood that leads to splitting, warping, or joint failure as materials try to return to their natural state. Measuring in position accounts for irregularities that wouldn't show up if you just measured the opening and cut accordingly. This adaptive approach requires confidence and experience to know when adjustment is needed and how much is appropriate. Precision at this stage means joints close tightly without gaps or forcing, creating stronger connections that last longer. The Amish understand that wood is a natural material with variation, and working with that variation produces better results than fighting it. Custom fitting each piece takes slightly more time initially, but eliminates the much longer time needed to fix forced joints later. Boards that fit naturally stay in place better and require less hardware to secure properly. This technique also reduces the cracking and splitting that happens when pieces are wedged into spaces slightly too small for them. Build with airflow in mind. Natural ventilation gets designed into Amish buildings from the beginning rather than added as an afterthought. Vents and open gables allow air to circulate freely, reducing humidity that causes wood rot and encourages mold growth. The Amish position openings to catch prevailing winds, creating passive cooling that makes buildings comfortable without mechanical systems. Buildings that can't breathe end up wheezing with mold problems nobody wants to deal with. Proper airflow also helps materials dry faster after rain or during humid periods when moisture naturally accumulates. Cross-ventilation patterns get established by placing openings on opposite walls at strategic heights where air naturally flows. This design consideration extends building lifespan significantly since dry wood resists decay far better than damp conditions. The Amish learned centuries ago that fighting natural air movement creates problems while working with it solves many issues automatically. Ridge vents at roof peaks allow hot air to escape naturally since heat rises and needs somewhere to go. Lower vents provide intake for the circulation pattern, creating continuous movement without fans or electricity. Barns particularly benefit from this design since stored hay and animal housing generate significant moisture and heat. Modern sealed buildings often develop air quality problems that traditional ventilated designs avoid entirely. The techniques require understanding airflow patterns but add no cost while providing permanent benefits. Then use local materials. First, sourcing wood, stone, and sand from nearby locations saves the Amish enormous effort in transportation and cost. Local materials have adapted to regional weather patterns over time, making them naturally suited for local construction conditions. Hauling materials from distant sources wastes time and energy that could go into actual building work. The Amish develop relationships with local sawmills and quarries, ensuring reliable supply chains that don't depend on distant shipping. Regional wood species have proven performance in local climates, with known characteristics that builders can count on. Stone from nearby quarries matches the geological conditions where it'll be used, preventing incompatibility issues with soil chemistry. Local sourcing also means replacement materials for future repairs will match original construction perfectly. The Amish understand that materials from different regions may look similar but perform differently under varying moisture and temperature conditions. Transportation costs and effort increase dramatically with distance, making local sourcing economically sensible beyond just convenience. Building with local materials also connects structures to their landscape, creating harmony between construction and environment. This practice supports local economies and builds community relationships that benefit everyone long-term. Materials that grow or form locally have inherently lower environmental impact and greater sustainability. Work from the inside out. Interior support structures go up first in Amish construction, providing the skeleton that everything else attaches to. This logical sequence creates structural stability before adding exterior walls that depend on that interior framework. Working inside out provides better access to connections and joints without exterior walls blocking movement or visibility. The Amish frame interior supports where they can work from all sides, making installation and adjustment far easier. This approach also means any mistakes or adjustments happen before they're locked in by exterior elements. Interior frameworks establish the building's basic geometry, which guides all subsequent exterior work for proper alignment. Finishing interior structural elements before closing the exterior prevents situations where workers must navigate around completed walls. Building from outside in is like putting on your jacket before your shirt and wondering why nothing fits right. The method creates natural workflow progression where each phase logically follows from what came before. Interior framing also gets protected faster once exterior walls go up, preventing weather exposure during the finish work. Load-bearing calculations work better when interior supports are established first and exterior elements added to that stable base. This sequence reduces overall construction time despite seeming backwards to people used to seeing walls go up first. The Amish recognize that visible progress isn't always the most efficient path to completion. Sharpen blades. Every morning. Dull tools waste massive amounts of energy and slow every task down, which is why the Amish sharpen daily without exception. A few minutes of maintenance at dawn saves multiple hours of effort throughout the workday. Sharp saws slice through wood cleanly with minimal resistance, while dull blades tear fibers and require heavy pressure. The Amish maintain dedicated sharpening stations with files, stones, and honing equipment ready for quick morning routines. Chisels receive particular attention since their cutting edges take tremendous abuse and dull quickly under normal use. Sharp tools also produce cleaner cuts that fit together better and look more professional in finished work. The daily sharpening habit prevents the gradual decline in tool performance that happens when maintenance gets postponed. Workers can feel immediately when a tool is properly sharp versus just functional, and that difference impacts every cut. Morning sharpening also provides a ritual that prepares builders mentally for the day while caring for their primary work instruments. Tools last far longer with daily maintenance since small touch-ups prevent the heavy grinding needed to restore badly dulled edges. The Amish passed down specific sharpening techniques for different tools, with angles and methods refined through generations of experience. Keeping edges keen shows respect for tools and understanding that quality work requires quality equipment. Always keep spare. Parts handy. Small storage crates positioned around Amish work sites contain extra nails, wooden pegs, and braces ready for immediate use. This preparation prevents the workflow interruption that happens when supplies run short and someone must stop to retrieve more. Running out of nails mid-project is like running out of coffee mid-morning. Everything just stops until the problem gets fixed. The Amish organize spare materials by type and size, so finding the right piece takes seconds rather than minutes of sorting. Quick access to backup supplies keeps momentum going when work is flowing smoothly and rhythm is established. These spare part stations get restocked at day's end, so they're ready for the next morning without delays. Running out of essential fasteners or braces can halt multiple workers simultaneously, multiplying the lost time significantly. The Amish learned that stopping to search for materials breaks concentration and makes restarting harder than maintaining continuous flow. Spare parts also cover unexpected needs when pieces break or measurements require adjustments to the original plan. Strategic placement of these supply points means no worker is ever far from what they need for their current task. The small-time investment in organizing and positioning spares pays back many times over through sustained productivity. This preparation shows the same planning mindset that guides every aspect of traditional construction methods. Work with natural light angles. Daylight reveals surface flaws, uneven edges, and alignment issues far better than artificial lighting ever could. The Amish position themselves and their work to take advantage of natural light angles throughout the day. Rotating around a workpiece shows different perspectives as shadows shift, highlighting problems that single-angle viewing might miss. Low morning or late afternoon light creates dramatic shadows that make even slight irregularities obvious and correctable. This natural inspection method costs nothing and provides better information than most mechanical measuring devices. The Amish understand that seeing the work clearly is half the battle in maintaining quality throughout construction. Direct sunlight shows grain patterns and surface characteristics that matter for matching pieces and ensuring consistent appearance. Working under natural light also reduces eye strain compared to harsh artificial lights that cause fatigue over long days. The changing light conditions throughout the day provide automatic variation in inspection angles without requiring deliberate repositioning. Cloudy days offer different advantages with diffuse light that eliminates shadows and shows overall form clearly. The Amish avoid dim conditions entirely since reduced visibility dramatically increases error rates and safety risks. Natural light inspection techniques have guided quality construction for centuries before electric lights existed and remain completely effective today. Align boards with string lines. A simple taut string stretched between 2 points creates a perfectly straight reference line that gravity keeps true. Amish carpenters adjust boards until they align exactly with this string, ensuring long runs stay perfectly straight. This technique works equally well for horizontal applications like deck boards or vertical uses like wall studs. String lines cost almost nothing but provide accuracy that rivals expensive laser levels for most construction applications. The Amish check alignment by looking along the string from one end, where even tiny deviations become instantly visible. Multiple strings at different heights create a three-dimensional reference grid for complex alignment situations. Taut strings also reveal warped boards immediately since the string stays true, while bent lumber shows obvious gaps. This method requires no batteries, produces no electronic failures, and works in any weather condition without complaint. The simplicity means anyone can use string lines effectively after minimal instruction, making it perfect for team building situations. Strings can span long distances that would require multiple measurements and calculations with other methods. The Amish replace strings regularly since worn or stretched line loses accuracy and defeats the purpose of this precision technique. Check level with water jars. A transparent jar filled with water becomes a natural level that works anywhere without requiring manufactured tools. The Amish use this ancient technique when building on uneven ground or in situations where conventional levels aren't available. Water always finds level because gravity is remarkably consistent about pulling things downward. The water surface stays perfectly horizontal regardless of how the container is positioned, providing an accurate reference for comparison. This method works by placing the jar on a surface and observing whether the water line stays parallel to that surface. Tilted surfaces show immediately because the water remains level while the jar tilts with the surface beneath it. Clear glass containers work best since they allow viewing the water line from multiple angles for confirmation. The technique is particularly useful for checking large areas where conventional levels would require multiple measurements. Water jars can also verify that manufactured levels are still accurate by comparing their bubble readings against the water surface. This natural leveling method requires understanding that still water always creates a true horizontal plane. The Amish teach this trick as backup knowledge for situations where standard tools aren't available or when verification is needed. Simple physics provides construction solutions that work as reliably today as they did centuries ago before manufactured tools existed. Seal wood naturally. Beeswax, linseed oil, and turpentine mixtures protect wood without the harsh chemicals found in modern sealants. The Amish apply these natural treatments by hand, working them deep into wood fibers for maximum absorption and protection. Natural sealants prevent moisture penetration that causes cracking, warping, and premature decay of wooden structures. These traditional mixtures cost less than commercial products while providing protection that lasts years with proper reapplication. Chemical sealants smell like the inside of a paint factory, while natural oils smell like someone's actually building something. Hand application forces workers to inspect every surface closely, catching problems that spray application might miss entirely. Linseed oil penetrates deeply and hardens within the wood rather than just coating the surface like modern sealants. Beeswax provides water resistance while allowing wood to breathe, preventing moisture from getting trapped inside where it causes rot. The Amish mix these ingredients in specific proportions refined through generations of testing and observation. Natural sealants remain flexible as wood expands and contracts, while rigid chemical coatings can crack and peel over time. These treatments also enhance wood grain appearance, bringing out natural beauty rather than hiding it under opaque layers. Reapplication is straightforward since compatible materials bond easily to previous coats without extensive preparation. Environmental safety makes natural sealants better for workers applying them and occupants living with the finished results. Recycle sawdust and scraps. Sawdust that accumulates during cutting operations finds multiple uses rather than becoming waste on Amish construction sites. Fine sawdust gets mixed into animal bedding where it absorbs moisture and provides comfortable cushioning. Larger wood chips and shavings fill gaps in walls or get composted to return nutrients to the soil. Small wood scraps become wedges, shims, or blocking pieces that solve minor fitting problems during assembly. Slightly larger scraps get saved as firewood that heats homes and workshops through cold seasons. The Amish waste almost nothing because they recognize that every piece of material represents effort in harvesting, processing, and transporting. This comprehensive reuse mentality maximizes value from every resource while minimizing disposal needs and environmental impact. Sawdust can also mix with glue to create wood filler that matches the original material perfectly. Some scraps become practice pieces where young builders develop skills without wasting premium lumber. The cultural value placed on resourcefulness extends beyond mere economy to reflect respect for materials and labor. Modern construction often treats scraps as trash, losing potential value and creating unnecessary waste disposal problems. Efficiency measured properly includes getting maximum use from materials rather than just completing tasks quickly. Keep a consistent pace. Steady work speed beats frantic rushing that leads to mistakes and exhaustion in Amish construction culture. They take short breaks regularly to maintain focus and prevent the mental fatigue that causes errors. Marathon runners who sprint the first mile usually finish behind those who maintain steady pace throughout. Consistent pacing allows workers to sustain effort throughout long days without hitting walls of exhaustion. The Amish understand that construction is endurance work where sustainability matters more than brief bursts of intense activity. Regular rhythm prevents injuries that happen when tired workers lose concentration or attempt tasks beyond their current energy levels. Projects actually finish faster with consistent pacing because less time gets lost to mistakes requiring correction. Teams maintain morale better when work feels sustainable rather than constantly pushing beyond comfortable limits. The steady approach also allows continuous quality monitoring rather than the occasional checking that happens during rushed work. Workers develop flow states where tasks happen almost automatically when pace stays even and distractions stay minimal. Short breaks provide mental reset opportunities that improve focus for the next work session. Consistent pacing creates predictable daily progress that makes overall project timelines more reliable and easier to plan. The discipline required for steady work develops over time but pays enormous dividends in reduced fatigue and improved outcomes. Inspect every step. Continuous inspection catches problems when they're small and fixable, rather than waiting until they become major failures. The Amish check each section before adding the next layer, testing strength, fit, and balance constantly. Multiple sets of eyes examine work from different angles because individual blind spots mean one person might miss what another notices. Catching mistakes early is like finding weeds when they're seedlings instead of waiting until they're trees. Small fixes during construction take minutes and cost almost nothing compared to corrections after project completion. The inspection mindset means every worker watches for potential issues rather than assuming someone else handles quality control. Testing joints by applying pressure reveals weaknesses before loads get added that could cause catastrophic failure. Visual inspection shows alignment problems that measuring might miss if measurements get taken from wrong reference points. The Amish also inspect materials before installation, rejecting pieces with hidden flaws that would compromise structural integrity. This constant vigilance prevents the cumulative errors where small mistakes compound into large misalignments. Inspection becomes automatic habit rather than separate task when integrated naturally into workflow. Team inspection creates accountability where everyone takes ownership of overall quality rather than just their individual tasks. Building right the first time through continuous inspection saves far more effort than appears in immediate time investment. Protect work at day's end. Covering all tools and lumber before sunset protects against overnight dew and moisture that causes warping. The Amish prevent morning delays by ensuring materials stay dry and ready for immediate use when work resumes. Protective tarps get positioned carefully to shed water rather than collecting it in pools that soak through to materials below. This daily discipline shows respect for materials and understanding that proper care extends their usable life significantly. Tools left exposed to weather develop rust that dulls cutting edges and makes mechanisms stiff and difficult to operate. Morning dew can make lumber swell slightly, throwing off measurements and creating fitting problems that weren't present the previous day. Protected materials also stay cleaner, reducing the surface preparation needed before applying finishes or sealants. The Amish make this protection routine rather than optional, building it into the daily workflow as naturally as cleanup. Secured tarps also prevent wind damage and keep materials from blowing around the worksite overnight. This end-of-day routine creates clear transitions between work sessions and ensures nothing important gets forgotten or left vulnerable. Consistent protection prevents the gradual degradation that happens when materials face repeated exposure to moisture cycles. The small daily effort prevents larger problems that interrupt work and waste materials through preventable damage. Leave nothing unfinished. Completing each phase fully before stopping prevents confusion and wasted setup time the next day when Amish crews return. The principle means foundation work finishes completely, wall framing reaches logical stopping points, and roof sections get secured properly. Partial completion creates uncertainty about what's done and what needs finishing, slowing startup as workers assess the situation. Finished work motivates teams by providing visible accomplishment and clear indication of progress made. The Amish understand that momentum carries between work sessions when people return to completed foundations ready for the next logical step. Stopping mid-task forces workers to remember exactly where they were and what comes next, mental effort that wastes valuable morning energy. Complete phases also allow proper inspection before moving forward, ensuring quality rather than discovering problems after they're buried. This discipline requires planning daily work to reach natural completion points rather than stopping arbitrarily when time expires. Teams sometimes extend work slightly to finish a section properly rather than leaving it incomplete overnight. The practice prevents the deterioration that happens when partially completed work sits exposed to weather or gets disturbed by animals. Clear completion points also make it easier to coordinate team schedules since everyone knows exactly what's been accomplished. This finishing mentality reflects craftsmanship values where quality and completeness matter more than just clocking hours. The Amish don't just build structures, they build efficiency into every move. Their 40 timeless tricks prove that real craftsmanship isn't about rushing or relying on machines. It's about rhythm, teamwork, and respect for the process. In a world obsessed with speed, their way reminds us that working smarter will always outlast working harder.